Okay, so we begin the Gemara today on Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the top. Ella Omarava. We're mamish in the middle of a sugya here. The Gemara brought a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish regarding a case where a person did chalitza or yibum for the Yevamos, and then it turns out that she was mu'uberes, she was pregnant. So even though she miscarries later, and therefore she's supposed to be up for yibum or for chalitza, but the question is, since the yibum and the chalitza was done while she was pregnant, and at that point it was unclear whether she would be obligated in this yibum and chalitza, is it effective? Is it good? So Rabbi Yochanan says it is, and Reish Lakish says it's not. And the Gemara explained by Riches the basis of their machlokes. Then the Gemara brought a braise, where in that braise it said, towards the bottom of Daf Lamed Hey, the Gemara brought a braise where it says that if a person marries a Yevamos v'nimtzas mu'beres, so then the tzara, the other wife, has to wait and see what happens. And the Gemara there changed the words of the braise. The braise over there says, why does she have to wait? Shema yehei avlad ben kayama. Because maybe the child that will be born will be a viable child. So the Gemara said that you can't read it that way, because if the child that's born is a viable child, there's no reason for the tzara to wait around. Adarabba, that means that you're not obligated in yibum, because there's a child that's born over here. The Gemara changed it to be maybe Shema lo yehei avlad ben kayama. She has to wait around because maybe the child born will not be viable, and therefore she won't be able to go get married to anyone else. So the Gemara says that proves that even though there was a yibum that was done before, but the yibum was not good. Why? Because the yibum was done during the time when his Yevamos was pregnant. Now that proves that Reish Lakish is right, that the yibum in such a time period is not effective. So the Gemara now comes back to this braise, and Rava will interpret this braisa according to Rabbi Yochanan, that says that the yibum in the time of the ibur, when she was mu'beres, is effective, and he will teach the braisa kipshutai, the way the braisa reads in the beginning, without changing the lashon of the braisa. Let's see. Ela Amar Rava, so Rava now explains as follows. Hachi ka'ama, you read the braisa this way, going back to the original way the braisa is read. Hakainis yivimtai, person marries his Yevamos, v'nimtzas mu'beres, and you find out that she was pregnant. Hareizu leitinasi tzarasa. The tzara, the other wife, should wait around. She cannot yet go and get married to anybody, because she could say, okay, now I'm absolved. Now already the yibum was done. Why not? Shema yehei vlad ben kayama. So we read the braisa the way it is originally, because maybe this child that's born is a ben kayama, is a viable child. And what if it's a viable child? Do bias mu'uberes loishma bia. So that yibum, if she is mu'uberes, and she has a viable child, so that's not a yibum at all. And chalitzas mu'uberes lo yishma chalitza. And the chalitza of a mu'uberes, if the child that's going to be born is a viable child, is not a chalitza at all. There's only yibum or chalitza if there's no child. But if it will be a viable child, so then it's nothing. The yibum and the chalitza was nothing. Now, so therefore she has to wait. Now, why does she have to wait? So again, the first part of this braisa is saying that everybody will agree that the yibum or the chalitza of a yavam is nothing if the child that would be born is a viable child. In such a case, there's no requirement of yibum and chalitza. But the point though is, if that's what we are banking on, if that's the tzad that we're looking at, that the child is actually a viable child, so let the tzara go get married to whoever she wants. There's no point, there's no need for yibum and chalitza at all. So on that, the braisa says, we continue and explain, v'havlad eina poiter at sheyetze la'avera olam. And the child that's going to be born does not pata you of that yibum and chalitza until he's actually born. It's true, Taka, on that side, that if the child that will be born is a viable child, you won't need yibum and chalitza, but you have to wait until that child is born. When you see a woman that's pregnant, you can't say, oh, she becomes pregnant, so therefore now we can look at the tzad and say that mistama, the child that will be born, will be a viable child, therefore no yibum and chalitza. No, you have to wait until the child is born. That's what the braisa meant when it said that the tzara should not get married. Meaning, the tzara has to wait until she will actually see that the child that was born was a viable child. So this fits with what Rabbi Yochanan said. Tanya kivasei de Rava, we have in a braisa, it clearly says like Rava's pshat here. Braisa says the same thing. Hakainis yivimtoi, person marries his Yevamos, v'nimtzis mu'beres, she turns out to be pregnant, hareizu leitinasi tzarasa. The tzara, the other wife, should not go ahead and get married. Shema yevlad ben kayama, because maybe the child that's born is a viable child. Ve'eim bia v'chalitza peteres. And now you may ask, if so, let her go get married right away. because the Yibum was done already. So either the Yibum was done, or the child that's born is a viable child, so there's no need for Yibum. Let her go get married right away. So the Braisa adds, Ve'ein bia v'chalitza peteres, the bia and the chalitza before will not pater the tzara, elevlat pater. You have to wait until that child is born to be sure that you pater. V'havlat ein pater atchetzela ve'olam, and the child does not pater until the child is born. That's a Braisa that says clearly like Rav's Pshat. So now based on this, the Gemara comes back to ask, if so, this is a question on Rish Lakish's opinion. Rish Lakish says that if you do Yibum or Chalitza in the time when the woman is Mu'uberes, so then, even if the child that's born is not viable, it's not a good Yibum and Chalitza. That's not what it's mashma here. So the Gemara now, time, we can be medayik from this Braisa is, the only reason why the Yibum and Chalitza is not good is because Shema Yehi Vlad ben Kayama. That's because if the child that's born is a viable child, so then there's no need for Yibum and Chalitza. That's why the Braisa is saying the Yibum and Chalitza is nothing. But Loi, have Vlad ben Kayama, if the child born is not a viable child, then miftar tzarasa. That would pater the tzara of Yibum and Chalitza. That's what it's mashma over here in this Braisa, not like Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says it doesn't make a difference if the child is viable or not, as long as the Yibum and Chalitza is done during the time when this woman is pregnant and we don't know yet what the future will be, it's not a good Yibum and Chalitza. So leimet have to yufta the Rish Lakish. Shall the lashon of this Braisa here refute what Rish Lakish said? So Gemara says, no, Amalach Rish Lakish will answer you. Achiketani. You have to read the Braisa this way. And Rish Lakish is actually going to go back to the Girsa that the Gemara said before in the Flamed Hayim Beis. He switched the Girsa of the Braisa. And that is as follows. Hakainis Yevimtai, person that does Yibum for his Yevamah. V'nimtzis mu'beres, it turns out that she's pregnant. Hareizu leitinasit sarasa, the other wife has to wait. She cannot go and get married. And here he brings the Girsa of Shema loyei avlad ben kayama. Because maybe the child that's born will not be a ben kayama, not a viable child. And therefore, even if it's not a viable child, v'chalitzas mu'beres loishma chalitza, bias mu'beres loishma bia. Even if the child that's born is not viable, and you require chalitza and yibum, but if it was done when she's pregnant, it's not a good chalitza or it's not a good bia. The yibum is not a good yibum. Now the Braisa adds another point. According to the Shlokish, the Braisa comes and clarifies. Vim toimar. Now, if you may ask, haleich acha roiv noshim. Why would we not say that if she is pregnant and we're not sure what kind of child will be born, a viable child or not, why shouldn't we follow the majority? Most women give birth to a child that will live. So v'roiv nashim vlad malya yoldan. Most children born are healthy and live. So why can't we rely on that and let the tzara go and get married right away, relying on the fact that she's pregnant, that you won't need any yibum and chalitza? Vlad, nevertheless, Vlad ain pater atchietzel averaylam. We do not rely on that, on this roiv, and the Vlad that paters you from Yibum and Chalitza is only once the child is actually born and you're 100% sure that you don't need Yibum and Chalitza. So the Gemara continues. Now this is all in the Machlekes over here of Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish. Omer Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar said about Rish Lakish's opinion, Efshe, is it possible, Isa lahad Rish Lakish, that what Rish Lakish said is true? And again, what was the halach of Rish Lakish? That if you do Yibum or Chalitza for a Yevama and she was Mu'uberes, even if the child later that's born is not viable, but it does not take effect, is it true that this Chiddush of Rish Lakish is said, and v'loit nanla b'masnisen, and we don't have this learnt in any Mishnah anywhere? In other words, apparently Rabbi Elazar considered this to be such a basic halacha, or maybe such a chiddush, that such a thing should have been said in a Mishnah somewhere. So we don't have any hint for this in a Mishnah anywhere, for this halacha of Rish Lakish. Nafak, Rabbi Elazar went out, Dok, and he looked closer into different Mishnayos and Vashkach. He found a Mishnah where you could see the halacha of what Rish Lakish said. There's a Mishnah later in this Masechta that says as follows. Mamish, one of the last Mishnayos actually in the Masechta. So it says there's a woman, her husband, and the other co-wife, they both went overseas. Now, they came back, Adam came back and told her, Meis Bailach, your husband died. So now, what she doesn't know, she didn't have any children with him. Now the question is, what's with the other wife that went along with him? Did the other wife have any children or not? So the Mishnah there says, so she cannot go ahead and get married to anybody else, and And she also cannot go do a yibum with any of the brothers because she's not sure what she's supposed to do. Until she finds out, Shema mu'uberes yitzarasa. Maybe the co-wife, the other wife that went with her husband, maybe she was mu'uberes, and therefore she's not obligated in yibum. Maybe she's not mu'uberes, and therefore she is obligated in yibum. So she has to wait. That's what the Mishnah says. Okay, so the Gemara now is going to question here, is there really no way out? Is there no eitzah that you can do that she should be able to go get married even before she actually finds out whether her co-wife is mu'uberes? That might take a very long time. You have to go and send somebody to go find her and to figure out if she's mu'uberes or not. Is there no way out of it? Now, bish loy mi yivumi loy. I can understand why we don't allow her to go and marry one of the brothers to do yibum, because Shema Yehi Vlad ben Kayama. If it turns out that the other wife was pregnant and the baby that's born is a ben Kayama, is a viable child, so then there's no yibum. And then when there's no yibum, v'yivga b'esei eshesach. Marrying your husband's brother is a isrich akaras of eshesach, your brother's, your wife's, your brother's wife. Da'iraisa, it's ism and atayra. So that is not an option. You understand that? Elo, but the question over here is, the Mishnah doesn't take into account that we can do chalitza. Elo, loy tachloitz amai. Why can't she do chalitza, and then after she does chalitza, she would be able to go and get married? And the Gemara will explain when this chalitza would help. Amai, why doesn't the Mishnah talk about doing chalitza? So now, bish loime, it's understood, not always will chalitza help. Tachloitz betoichtes. If she would do chalitza within the 9 months, so the significance of the 9 months is that because we're wondering about the co-wife, whether she was pregnant, and for 9 months it would take time to see if the child that's born is viable or not. So if you can do chalitza within the 9 months, v'tenase b'teichtes, and then to allow her to get married to anybody else within the 9 months as well, you still can't allow her to do this because hainu safik. So, because there's still a suffix over here, if it's within the 9 months, so maybe she's, you don't know what kind of a birth there's going to be over here, so therefore she can't go and get married to anybody. So the suffix still applies. Elo tachloitz b'toich tisha, but the question is, within 9 months, you should be allowed to do chalitza, and then v'tinase la'achat tisha. And then after the 9 months, she should be able to get married to whoever she wants. After the 9 months, so over here, once she did chalitza, I mean, she did chalitza. So if she was supposed to do yibum, because the baby that was born was not a viable baby, so then she did chalitza. If the baby that was born was a healthy baby, so then she doesn't need even that chalitza. Now it's already after the 9 months, and after the 9 months she's allowed to go married, right? So why do you have to wait achatisha? Because the Gemara already said before that within the 9 months, so once the vlad is born. Only once the child is born, that's what patas you from the chalitza. So that's why before the Gemara said, it's still going to be a suffix. So okay, that we understand. Doing chalitza does not allow you to go get married to whoever you want mimanavshach, because within the 9 months, the baby wasn't born yet, it doesn't pata you from maybe doing yibum. But if you did chalitza, and then you waited 9 months, and now the baby was born, so mimanavshach, you should be allowed to go get married to whoever you want. So why doesn't the Mishnah give you that option? Okay, so the Gemara says, what's this raya for? So what do we see over here? That chalitza that you did within 9 months was not effective. Like what Rish Lakish said. Rish Lakish said, anytime you do chalitza during the time when a woman is pregnant, that chalitza is not effective. So this is the raya that Rabbi Elazar said, I see from this Mishnah, like Rish Lakish's opinion. So the Gemara doesn't accept this. Says the Gemara, so you're giving this eitz over here, that you can do chalitza and then allow her to go get married. So everybody should agree, even Rish Lakish would agree, tachloitz v'tinase la'achates, that if you do the chalitza after 9 months, so now the chalitza is not during the time of pregnancy, and then she can go and get married, even Rish Lakish should agree that should work. According to Rish Lakish, if you do chalitza within the 9 months when she still could be pregnant, and therefore at that time the chalitza is not effective, so then that was, according to Rish Lakish, that doesn't work. That's why the Mishnah says she can't go get married to anybody. But still, the Mishnah should have said, let her wait 9 months, and then let her do chalitza, and then she can go get married. That's not what it says. What does it say in the Mishnah? The Mishnah says she has to go and wait and find out whether she's pregnant or not, which could take a year to go and send somebody to find out. Let her just do chalitza after 9 months and let her go get married. So therefore this Mishnah is very difficult to understand. And therefore the Gemara says there's another explanation for that Mishnah, and therefore there's no raya from here to Rish Lakish. Ella bar minah dahi. Forget about bringing a raya from that Mishnah to Rish Lakish. The Abaye bar Abba, Rav Chinina bar Abaye, the Omri Tarvayu, they both explained in that Mishnah that there's a different reason why the Chachamim will geyser that you can't get married to anybody. And over there, it's not minatayr, it's exedim midrabanan. Shema yehi vlad ben kayama, because maybe what will happen is the child that's born is a ben kayama. So if the child is a ben kayama, what does that mean? That she didn't need any chalitza, she didn't need any yibum at all. V'nimtza atamatzricha kruz l'kohuna. And now what happened? She already did chalitza because there was a suffix here. She did chalitza, and then she waited 9 months, and she went and got married, or maybe she did the chalitza after the 9 months, but the point is she did chalitza. Once you do chalitza, what happens? A woman that's a chalutza is also for kayanim. And now you're going to need her to go and notify and announce for everybody, even though it looks like I'm a chalutza, but I'm really not. Because it turns out that the child that was born was a ben kayama, and the whole chalitza was not necessary. So v'nimsat matzricha kruz l'kohuna. So now they're going to have to go and notify everybody that really she is able to marry kayanim. Says the Gemara Nusa, why is this the end of the world? V'litzricha. So she'll go and announce it. She'll let everybody know that the chalitza was not a chalitza. Says the Gemara, but you can't rely on that. Dilme iki inish, there could be people that have a chalitza. They were there when the chalitza was done, so they know that she can't marry any kayin. And they're not there when they announced that the chalitza was ineffective b'chlal because the child later that was born was viable. And then she's going to go and marry a kayin. And those people that are not aware that the chalitza was not really a chalitza, they're going to come to say, Kashari chalutza l'kayin. Look, a chalutza could marry a kain. Right, so therefore, because of this is a very unusual gzeira. The Ritva points out, it becomes out of because of this, they made a gzeira that she can't go get married to anybody until you go and verify what happened to her co-wife. Was she pregnant? Was she not? What was the child born? So they asked her to get married to anybody because of this chash that people might come to say that we're being mater a chalutza l'kayin. Even though this would have been a simple eitzah, let her just do chalitza and then she can go get married. Okay, so therefore, Bekitzer, the point is, this is not a raya to Rish Lakish's opinion, because this Mishnah, when it's saying that she's not allowed to get married, it's Gzeira Midrabanan. Malay Abaye. So now Abaye comes back and says, wait, I have a different shot for that Mishnah B'chlal. Who says the Mishnah says that this is not an option, the to do chalitza? Midi loy tachloitz v'loy tisyabim ketani? Did it say in the Mishnah that she can't go and do chalitza and she can't do yibum? All it said is that she can't go get married to anybody, or she can't do yibum to get married to one of the brothers. Beloy chalitza, without chalitza. But maybe even the Mishnah would agree that if you do chalitza, then the chalitza is a good way for her out to be able to go and get married to whoever she wants. Whether you do chalitza within the 9 months, according to Rabbi Yechanan, or chalitza after the 9 months, when the co-wife is not pregnant, according to the Shlakish. But the Mishnah did not mention chalitza, because if you do chalitza, it will work. So Bekitza, this Mishnah is not a raya. But now the Gemara brings Tanya Kvasei de Rish Lakish. We have a braise where it says like Rish Lakish, and that is clear. A chaylis l'mu'uberes, a person that does chalitza for the Yevamos when she was pregnant, vihi pila, and then she miscarried. Tzricha chalitza menachin. That chalitza that was done while she was pregnant is not effective. You got to do the chalitza over again. Another brother does the chalitza. Rava said, Hilchase Kvasei de Rish Lakish. We paskin like Rish Lakish bahani plus regarding the following 3 halachas. Now the chiddush here is, usually the halacha is always like Rabbi Yechanan, whenever he argued with Rish Lakish, besides these 3 that the Gemara will mention right here. Chada maran. One is the case that we're speaking about right here. We have a clear braisa like Rish Lakish, that chalitza during a time of mu'beres does not work at all. And idach, another one is the following. The Tnan, we learned in the Mishnah, hamachalik nechasav al piv. A person that is dividing his properties for his children according to what he decides. In other words, not according to the regular Yerush al pitayre, but he's dividing it the way he wants. Riba le'echad, he gives one child more. Miyat le'echad, he gives one child less. The hishvalem is ha-b'chayr, he gives the b'chayr the same portion like everybody else, even though al pitayre, al b'chayr gets double. Dvarav kayamin. What he does will take effect. He can change, he can give out the money for his children however he desires. But now the Mishnah says, "V'im mishum Yerusha lo yom haklom." But if, when he's distributing the money the way he wishes, but he says, this child should yarshin this amount, this child should inherit this amount, he uses the Lashon Yerusha, that he can't do. Why not? Because you can't go against what it says in the Torah. This is what's called Masna Mashakasu B'Torah. But if you're giving a gift, if it's not a Yerusha, you're saying, I'm gifting one child this amount and another one the other amount, you're not going against Torah, you're giving a gift. That's allowed. Now, here the Mishnah that it spells out, Kosav, if when he's writing this document, when he's distributing the money to his children in his own way, so he writes in the document, Bein B'tchila, whether in the beginning of it, Bein B'Saif, whether in the end of it, or Bein B'Emtza, or whether in the middle, Mishum Matana, he mentions the language of Matana, Dor of Kayamin. But he said takes effect. So Rashi gives the examples. He said, Tinasein Sadaplainis Laplaini Vi. He said in the beginning a Lashon Matana and the end a Lashon of Yerusha. Or in the reverse, or somewhere in the middle. As long as he includes a Lashon of Matana in middle, that's good. Now on this, the Shlokish says, so now this person is distributing his money to a few children. What's if he mentioned the term Matana only regarding one child? And regarding another child, he only used the term Yerusha. Will he be allowed to distribute the money as he wishes, even though for a certain child he only mentioned the Lashon of Yerusha? So Rashi here brings, Rabbi Yechanan said that even in that case it's okay. He can distribute the money how he wants, even though he did not mention the term Matana, that is a gift for all children. Rish Lakish though disagrees. They're not going to acquire this in the way the father wanted to distribute it for the children until he uses the term matane for all of the children. Pliny, this child and this child, Yirshu Sada Pliny will inherit this and the other field. Shenasatim lohem. He has to use the term matana as a plural, that I gave them, b'matana and v'yirashim. They should inherit it. So even if he uses the term Yerusha in the beginning and in the end, but in the middle he used the term matana. But the point is he has to use the term matana in the plural for both brothers, then it takes effect for them. So this is the second case where we paskin like Rish Lakish. V'idach, the third case where we paskin like Rish Lakish, also regarding the halacha of Yerusha and Gemara and Baba Basra. The Tnan we learned in the Mishnah, case of kol nechasav libnai. A person, while he's alive, writes off all of his properties for his children. Rashi says that the way he wrote it is, he says, Mehayayim ulacha misa, meaning that really the gift that he's giving to his son does not take effect fully until after he passes away. So what happens then? So the halacha is, while the father is still alive, he's the one that could use the properties. He can live there, or he uses any paytis, if it's properties and grows fruits or trees, whatever it is, all the paytis still belong to the father. And the principal belongs to the son already, but the paytis belongs to the father. And therefore, the father can't sell any of these properties. He already wrote it off for his child. So you can't fully sell it to anybody. If he sell it to anybody, the paytis still belongs to the father, but the field itself he already gave to the son. And the son can't sell it either because the father still has it in his possession, where he's the one that is the only one that could still eat from the paytis. The son does not have the paytis, so you're going to sell the properties. The buyer can't use it at all. Now, what happens if macharav, the father does sell it to somebody, so that mechurin, then the sale goes through ad sheyamos. Until the father passes away. Right? So in other words, the father has the rights while he's alive to sell what is his. What is his? The paytis that he eats. So that he can sell while he's alive to somebody the paytis, but not the field itself. Then when he passes away, now the son gets the field and all the paytis are his. Machara ben, if the son sells it while the father's still alive, the buyer can't use anything in the property until the father passes away. Because while the father's alive, the father's the one that can use and takes everything from the field. That's the lashon that it says in the Mishnah. Now on this, there's a machlokes of Rabbi Yechanan and Rish Lakish regarding another variable over here, when the son sells it. So we learned the following machlokes, machara ben b'chayeyav. So it starts off the case the same like it says in the Mishnah. The son sold this field that we're talking about over here in the lifetime of the father. Now, umeisa ben b'chayav. What happened is, not the father passed away. If the father would have passed away, so then the buyer would have gotten that field totally, like the Mishnah clearly said. But instead, what happened was the son passes away, b'chayav, the son passes away first, and then after the son passes away, then the father passes away. Now the question becomes, this buyer that bought the field from the son, will he acquire this field or not if the son passes away before the father passes away? Rabbi Yechanan says, no, this buyer did not, the buyer does not acquire this field because the son passed away first. Rish Lakish says, no, the lekeach eventually is kaina. Yes, the son passes away first, so now the father still has possession over this field. But then when the father passes away, the son is kind of the field. That's the machlekes. The Gemara explains this machlekes. Rabbi Yechanan, his opinion is, loy kana lekeach, when the son passes away first. So the buyer of the son will not ever acquire this field because kinyan peitis, that kinyan peitis that the father still holds on to, kekinyan aguftami. That kinyan peitis is strong enough as if he has a kinyan on the guf, on the field itself, and therefore if the son passed away first, the buyer of the son will never be able to get it. In the order of the Mishnah, what happened in the Mishnah? The son sells the field, so at that point the father still has the peitis, but then the father passed away first. The moment the father passes away, now the guf of the field belongs to the son, and then the son sold it to someone else, so now the son has full control over the field, both the guf and the peitis, so the buyer gets it. But in this case, if what happened was that the son that only had peitis, that only had the guf of the field, that is, he only had the guf of the field, and the father still had the peitis, the son passes away first, because the father retains ownership over the peitis of the field, so that ownership that he has on the peitis of the field holds back the buyer of being able to be kind of the field, as if the father has a kinyan in the guf of the field itself. And therefore, even if the father is going to die later, it will not go over to the buyer. Rish Lakish says, kana lekeyach. No, even in this case, where the son passed away first, and the son never got full control over this field that he sold to his buyer. Nevertheless, the son passed away first, and then the father passed away. Kinyan peitis, lafka kinyan guf dami. The fact that the father still retained ownership over the peitis does not hold back the buyer's sale, the acquisition for him to buy the field to take effect. The son owned the guf of the field, and he sold the guf of the field to this person. So if eventually the son passed away, and then the father passed away, the buyer will be kind of everything. It will be kind of the guf and the peitis of the field. This is the last case where over here we also paskin like Rish Lakish. Now, going back to the Mishnah. What did it say in the Mishnah? Regarding a case where a person did yibum for the Yevamos, and what happened to this Yevamos? She was mu'beres, she was pregnant, and then it turned out, ein avlat shel kayama, the child was not shel kayama, so therefore he can yikayim. The Mishnah said, if so, the Yibum was a good Yibum, he could remain married to her. Tana, but in a Braisa we learned the third opinion, another opinion that is, that disagrees with the Mishnah. Tana Mishum Rabbi Eliezer says, Amru, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, they said, Yoitzi beget. No, he has to divorce her. He has to divorce her, and he has to divorce her with a get. Why is this? So this is actually a knas. Really, minatayra, the yibum took effect because it turns out that the child born was not viable, and it was a good yibum, but because he did not wait to see if she's going to be mu'beres or not, this is a knas, and therefore he has to divorce her with a get. Amar Rava says, Rab Meir and Rab Eliezer amru davar echad. This halacha that Rab Eliezer said here, Rab Meir also says a similar thing regarding a different case. Where do we find this? Rab Eliezer damara. Rab Eliezer right over here that this Yavam should have waited before he did the Yibum, and because he didn't, there's a knas that he has to divorce her. And Rab Meir also said a similar thing. The Tanya, we learned in Abraisa, Lo yisa damu beres chaveda menekes chaveda. If a person divorces his wife, or he passes away, and his wife is still pregnant, or she's still nursing a baby, you're not allowed to get married to her in that time period. Now, v'im nasa, if he did not listen to the takana of Chachamim and you got married to her, yoitzi, you have to divorce her, v'lo yachzer oilamis, you're never allowed to get married to her again. This is Rab Meir's opinion. So Rab Meir is saying a similar thing to Rab Eliezer. Because you didn't listen to the takana of Chachamim, you have to divorce her forever. The Chachamim say yoitzi, you do divorce her, but then after the time period when this woman is not anymore pregnant or she's not nursing a baby, now you are allowed to go and get married to her. So now Abaye said regarding this that we are comparing here. Rava is comparing the case of what Rabbi Eliezer said and what Rabbi Meir said. Mimai, how do you know that you could compare these two? Dilme, I can tell you, loihi, there's no comparison between the two cases. Ad kan lekom Rabbi Eliezer hacha, over here in our Mishnah. In the case when a Yavam went and married a Yevama and it turns out that she's pregnant, over here Rabbi Eliezer was so harsh and he said that there's a knas, that he has to divorce her forever. The reason is, because here this is a serious issue. He's getting married to someone that could be a Isra of Kadas Minatayra, of marrying your brother's wife. Aval Hasam de Rabbanon, over there talking about a woman that was pregnant or was nursing a baby, that it's only mid Rabbanon. The Issa to marry this woman is only a takana mid Rabbanon. So maybe Rabbanon Svirile, maybe there Rabbi Eliezer would agree to the Rabbanon that you divorce her, but then you can get remarried to her. Inami, or if you want, I can make the distinction between these two cases in the reverse. The reason why Rab Meir was so harsh in that case that he has to divorce her forever, because over there we're talking about a takana mid Rabbanon, not to marry this woman. And we find many times Chachamim came and made a bigger knas and strengthened their takana even more than something minatayra, because we're concerned that you might not keep it. Over here we're talking about the Yavam that is marrying a Yevama, and if she's pregnant, this is an Issa Minatayra, if she has a viable child. So this is something Chachamim maybe did not make such a harsh knas, because Mifri Parshim Mina, people are not going to learn from this. People are going to be very careful about this and will separate from the Yevama to be sure that she's not pregnant. So you can't compare these two cases. One is Minatayra and one is Midrabanan. But now the Gemara goes back to what the Chachamim said. What did Chachamim say? When you marry this wife and you weren't allowed to, so then Yaitzi, and then afterwards, when the time comes, you're allowed to remarry her again. So the Rava explains, Amar Rava, Divrei Chachamim, according to what the Chachamim said, Yitzia beget. He didn't just mean separate from this wife, and then you could go and live with her again after that time period. What he meant to say is, you have to actually give her a get for that time period. So Mazutra says, yeah, they kanami. This is understood from the words of the Rabbanan. Diktani yaitzi, because it says yaitzi that you have to be maitzir. Maitzi means that with a get. V'lekatani yafrish. It does not say that you just separate from her. You have to actually give a get. Shma mina. That lashon of yaitzi proves that for this time you have to be maitzir with a get. Okay. Now, the Gemara will discuss over here. We're going to try to learn a little bit further into the next Amud. The Gemara here will discuss, wait a minute, if this is a case where the husband is a Kayin, so what you're saying over here, that there's a knas, or that the halach is that temporarily you have to divorce her and then you can get remarried to her. If the husband is a Kayin, that's a problem. Once you divorce her, you can't get remarried to her. So let's see. So the Gemara, we have a similar halacha that it says in a Mishnah or in a Braisa later. Rab Shimon Gamliel says, Kol shesha ba'adam lamed yom. If you wait by a human being, once a baby is born and you wait 30 days, ain't a nafel. After 30 days, you know the child is not a miscarriage, you know the child is viable. Okay, so now holoisha, but if you don't wait 30 days, then sveika have. So then it's a suffix. Okay, so in other words, this is also a halacha that's negeya over here, b'negeya to the halacha of chalitza, right, or yibum or chalitza, that you have to wait 30 days to know if the child is a viable child. Then the mother's pata of chalitza. And we learned the following machlokes about this. Meis b'toich lamed yaim. What happened if you have this woman? She's a yevama, and she gave birth, but it was within 30 days. And once she gave birth, she thought, okay, that's it. I'm not up for Yibum anymore. I can go get married to whoever I want. But then, after she went and got married within 30 days, she didn't wait. She went and she got married to someone else, but the child then died within 30 days. So it turns out that she is a Yevama, and she's not allowed to get married to anybody else. Ravina Mishmei de Rava Omar. Ravina says in the name of Rava, Im Eishes Yisraeli, if she was married to a Yisrael, then Chaletzes. Then she has to do Chalitza, because now we're not sure. The child that was born died within 30 days, so she has to do Chalitza. But V'meishes Kayani, but if the child that was born and died within 30 days, and she went and got married to a Kayan in that time, Ein Chaletzes. She does not have to go ahead and do Chalitza, because if she's going to do Chalitza, then she won't be able to go back to her husband that she's just married. She's a chalutza. Now what's the point of what are we relying on? So Rashi says, because it said before, within 30 days, it's a suffix. within 30 days, we're not sure that the child was not viable. Maybe it was a viable child, and maybe something happened, and the child died. So therefore, in such a case, we rely when it's a kohen, when she went and got married to a kohen, we rely on the fact that the child was a viable child and she can remain married to the kohen. If we're going to be machmer and require chalitza, she can't go back to her husband, which is a kohen. That's what Ravina said. Rav Misharshi Mishmei de Rave. Rav Misharshi, also in the name of Rave, said, Omar, achazu v'achazu, doesn't matter who she went and got married to. Whether she got married to a Yisrael, whether she went and got married to a kohen, chaletzes, we are going to require from her chalitza. Because it's a suffix. How could she remain married to her husband? Maybe she's a Yevamos. She's going to have to do chalitza. She won't be able to go get married to her husband again, her kohen. Too bad. So Ravina says to Rav Misharshi. They were both arguing about Rava. What did Rava say? So Ravina says to Rav Misharshi, Be'orte Omar Rava Hachi. You're right. Rava at night said, like you said, that you have to always give chalitza. It doesn't matter who the husband is. But if B'tzafra Hadebe, in the morning he had charata, and in the morning he said, like I said, that it matters if the husband is a Yisrael or a kohen. Amalei. So Rav Misharshi said to him, wow, Sharitu, you allowed this? You relied on this, that you say, you heard from Rava that if it's a kohen you don't need chalitza? If you could be mat to this, which in my eyes is such a clear isser, maybe the will of Hashem, that maybe you could be mat to also chaylev, fats, which is totally usser, maybe you could be mat to that as well. He's just saying how certain he is that he's making a mistake, that this is usser, just like it's so pashut that fats is usser. How can you be mat to such a thing? The chaylev is usser. Okay, so this is the machlokes over here regarding that case. What is the point? What do we see in that case? That we're concerned, or maybe there's a svara to say that we don't require chalitza in a case of a suffix because we don't want it to become asa to her husband, which is a kohen. Now, coming back to the case that we spoke about before. When a person got married to a woman when he wasn't supposed to, and it said before Yaitzi should divorce her and wait and then get remarried to her. So over here, person gets married to a woman that was pregnant from another person, or a menekes, she was nursing a baby, and you're not allowed to get married to her. Hanesul a kohen, and she did go and get married to a kohen. So what do we do now? Before we said you have to divorce her and then get remarried. Does that takana apply for a kohen as well? That just like by a Yisrael, you could divorce her and get remarried. Are you going to say by a kohen as well that he has to divorce her? And now he's going to be stuck. He can't get remarried to her, or maybe not. Maybe like we said over here, that you don't require chalitza. Maybe over here you should not require her to divorce her. So he said, no, you can't compare the case before to the case we're speaking about now. There's no comparison. Over there, when we're talking about a case when there was a child born and it's within 30 days and the child died and now it's a suffix. What's the halacha of this child? Was it a viable child or not? So over there, you have what to rely on not to give chalitza. Why? There is the opinion of Rabbanan that disagree with Rab Shimon Gamliel. Rab Shimon Gamliel says you have to wait 30 days to know a child is a viable child. Rabbanan say even before 30 days, you know already that the child is a viable child. So you could rely, the Amri Afagav de Loisha Vlad Ma'al Yahave. Even before 30 days, the child is already a viable child. So therefore, Gabe, Eishes, Kayin, if this woman got married to a Kayin, Kivin de Lo Efsher of Din Kirabana, since we can't require her to do Chalitza, because then she won't be able to get married to her husband, the Kayin, so we have who to rely on. We rely on the opinion of the Rabbanan that her child was a viable child and she doesn't need Chalitza. But over here, there's a takana midrabanan that she wasn't allowed to get married to this person, that to this woman that was pregnant or was nursing a baby. Keman navet. So according to who should we do? We have no opinion to rely on not to require a get. Rab Meir. You only have two opinions. Either Rab Meir's opinion, Ha'amar Yaitzi v'layachzai lamis. Rab Meir was very stringent. Rab Meir says you have to divorce her forever. Rabbanan, according to the Rabbanan, Amri beget. Rabbanan say at least you have to give a get until the time that you are allowed to get remarried to her. So over here, there's nobody to rely on. Even if she married the Kayin, you're going to have to give a get, and then she won't be able to get married back to her husband, which is a Kayin. We'll finish off with this point here. The Gemara brings another case where this was discussed. Itmer, so we learned the machlokes. Kitsha, what if a person is mekadesh an almana or a grusha within b'toich shloisha, within 3 months, right? We usually have to wait 3 months until you get married to an almana or grusha to know the child that's born. Whose child is this? What happens if a person is mekadesh a woman and does not wait 3 months, and then ubarach, he runs away? So now the question is, Pliga bar Rav Acha and Rafram argue whether do we force him to divorce her at this point or not. Chadamar, one of them say, Mishamtinan lei, we put him into a chayrim. In other words, we do whatever is in our power to force him to divorce her, that he married her in a time when he wasn't allowed. But another opinion says, no, Eruke, the very fact that he ran away from the wife that he just was Mekadesh, Mistaye, that proves that he's not planning on having any relations with her. The whole point is that he has to wait 3 months not to have any relations with her to know the child that's born, who's this child. So even though he was Mekadesh and he wasn't supposed to, but now that he ran away, we're not going to bother him. Hava Ovdet, there was an incident that happened, Va'amalahu Rafram, and Rafram came and said, Eruke Mistaye. The fact that he ran away is enough, and he's not going to have any relations with her. We don't have to force her to divorce her.